Y'all want some fudge? I can confirm Hope has spit her coffee everywhere. Can confirm.
I need a napkin.
Hope. Heyo! Welcome to another Vic and Hope Watched a Thing. We watched something.
We watched one thing.
We watched a thing. We just watched Blood, the Last Vampire.
Meet Saya. She is the last remaining original.
Saya! The orders from the top are to hunt them down no matter what.
From the creators of Ghost in the Shell.
She's the only remaining original.
Leave me alone.
Comes the next dimension in digital animation. Brace yourself for an all-out assault on the senses. Manga Entertainment presents the all-new Japanese animation thriller.
Target is heading for the runway. I don't believe it. There's actually 3 of them.
Blood, the Last Vampire.
So
Hey,
this is an old.
There's kids in our audience who aren't old enough to know what that is.
That is true. There might be
Potentially.
people listening to this who were not born when that movie came out. I doubt it. I don't think our audience is that young. I think
It's 2020.
there's people in our audience who were probably that young when they started listening to Digibros, but like I think by now they're
movie came
probably
out in
like in
2000?
college or out of college. Yeah,
And
came out in 2000.
there could be people watching this who are 20 years old.
I guess you're right.
They
Anyways,
may not know what this is.
we digress. Totally relevant. Well, partially not totally relevant. Because I saw this movie when I was 8 years old. It came out in the States in 2001. Came out in Japan in 2000. So in 2001 is probably the year when I saw this because my cousin had got it on VHS. And at that time he was reading like Anime Insider and shit. So he probably was like up on the latest anime. Probably saw this in a magazine before it came out and then got it knowing what it was, you know? Because I can't imagine many people just picking it up not knowing what it was. It was probably hyped up in anime magazines because this was, in 2001, this is the height of anime exploding in the West, you know? This is like right around Cowboy Bebop starts airing on Adult Swim. This is after Ninja Scroll, after Ghost in the Shell, after Akira. Like, anime is blowing up in the West. The fact that there was an Anime Insider magazine means it was blowing up in the West.
I think you'd be better describing it as anime is becoming known in the West. It's not
No, 'cause it was-
exploding. It's just, it's coming into our nerd consciousness.
It was entering public consciousness. Dragon Ball Z was on TV. Pokemon had already been on TV.
Yeah, but it
Like,
was still like socially unacceptable
well,
geek
it's
shit.
it's still socially unacceptable geek shit.
No,
but in terms
I
of like
disagree.
anime relevancy, anime was becoming relevant in a big way in terms of Western influence on anime in the way that
it was becoming known in
it
the
became
West.
known in the West enough that the Western audience had influence on the anime that was made.
Yes.
So that they would appeal to the West.
Yes.
And this is coming out of that cultural zeitgeist shift.
Sure.
Because that started with Akira bringing more anime to the West with darker themes and shit. And so Blood the Last Vampire is undoubtedly a result of anime trying to appeal to the West. Would you say that that's true? So this is an anime
Maybe.
coming out on the cusp of anime bridging into the West.
Maybe
right on that, like,
but only
right on the
because
boob.
it does involve like it's almost half in Japanese, half in English, just by the native dub.
Yeah, but it's also it's production IG. It's after Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell was a huge success in the West, you know, as like a bridging the gap niche
But
cult
I'm not
property.
sure if that was intentional.
Well, it wasn't intentional with Ghost
It
in the
wasn't
Shell.
like
But I'm
pandering
saying-
to the West.
But this is in sort of this era where stuff like they were making these grittier sort of cyberpunk, type movies, and like they were getting popularity in the West and they were leaning into that style, I think you could argue that. I am arguing it now. You could disagree with me, but I think it's a strong argument just based on the stuff that was coming out at that time, I mean, there was a huge presence of that in anime coming from the 80s into the 90s, and you see it in a lot of different shit. But like this I think is following a certain trend. And I think there's almost commentary in the fucking story on it if you want to read real deep into it.
Well, I believe this film takes place in like the 70s, so it's coming out.
Well, it takes place during before the Vietnam War.
Right.
Because she's going to the Vietnam War at the end of the movie.
Right.
So that puts it in like the 60s.
So like maybe late 60s.
Yeah. Was it? Yeah, 60s.
You would know better than me.
Yeah. We just watched a fucking Vietnam movie. Anyways, Blood the Last Vampire. So, it was, I guess, an OVA movie. I doubt it had a theatrical release because it's only 45 minutes long.
Yeah, it's a little short to have been released in theaters, but...
I believe the Blood series is a novel series. Japanese novel series. I don't think it was a manga.
I mean, there are manga now based off of that, but I don't think it was first.
Blood the Last Vampire is clearly a movie jumping into a story, It does not really give you any setup context.
Yeah.
It just is like it feels like a long episode of an anime, and you're just jumping in right in the climax.
It's like when you turn on Adult Swim, or you turn on Toonami when you were a kid, and you'd end up in the middle of an episode of, like, Inuyasha, and you're just like, I'm here. All right.
Like, it's that classic OVA style of just, like, they just pick something up and it goes. And they did as much as they could with the 45 minutes they were able to animate. And, like, it was clearly just, like, a promotional thing to make a badass VHS to sell a bunch of VHS tapes. And, like, fucking great job. It looks beautiful. Like, it looks really fucking awesome. So plot-wise, I mean, it's fairly simple to explain.
It's a very straightforward plot.
Like, it follows Saya. She is the last original, which is a vampire, basically. And so, very interesting setting, because in the beginning she is on a train, presumably going away from Tokyo, and the movie is in English and Japanese, because she goes to a military town in Japan, which is very familiar for us, because when we were in Japan, we went to Yokosuka,
yes,
which is a military town, an American military-based town in Japan. So we felt, watching this movie, like, we've been here.
This town is called Yokota.
Yeah. Little on the nose.
It's pretty obvious what it really is.
She's coming from Tokyo on a train. She ends up in Yokota. It's clearly Yokosuka. Especially, I mean, in the time of the Vietnam War... Like,
it would have been even more relevant.
Yeah, it would have been at peak relevance and peak, like, cultural oddness and weirdness.
Yeah, to have Americans in this Japanese town.
Because when we were in Yokosuka, it's clear that it's, like, it's been around for a while. It's clearly seen better days. And, like, the culture of the town is bars for Westerners to visit.
Yeah.
This is where we went, and they had stuff like the Donald Trump burger. And there was, like, a whole burger place that was just themed after U.S. presidents. Yeah. Like, that's the kind of
like
town
American
this is.
Pop culture.
Yeah. And you see in...
It's the only town with a Taco Bell.
Yes.
Well, and there was one in
Tokyo.
But
yeah.
Besides that...
They're around. But anyways.
They're rare.
You see it in the movie because, like, there's the old people talking outside. There's, like, the drag queens and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're working at these bars, serving Western customers. You see in the one scene where they're in the bar... And the guy says, Mama-san, and it's like, yeah, these fucking Americans coming to the bars, treating these people like shit, Well, and their cultural economy is kind of revolving around these assholes from the military base. Yeah,
while they live on the base.
It's pretty interesting. I really love the setting of this movie.
The setting is very unique. Like, I can't think of many stories that take place in that setting.
Yeah. Especially just coming in. Like, you're just thrown into this odd setting.
And if you don't have context for it, you could totally, like, not really understand the cultural implications of what's going on. Which,
like, throughout this movie, it was really interesting to me, because I haven't seen this movie since I was 8, And when I was 8... like, my memory of this movie, now it makes so much sense now that I've watched it again, because it's only 45 minutes long, and it just throws you in. So as a kid, I never really understood what the fuck the plot was, because it just goes.
It does just go.
And, like, if you're a little kid and you have no context of what Japan is, what military base is, like, I had no reference for anything going on in this movie at all. So it's pretty fascinating that, like, now I understand why I can remember so little of it.
Yeah.
But the images of the movie are unforgettable. Like, certain animation cuts just took me back immediately. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my god. Sword! Like, so many moments where it's just such an incredibly striking image that you're just, like, taken back to that moment watching it at 8 years old. So really cool.
You first watched it when you were 7 or 8, and so a lot of what you remember is visual aspects. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then you haven't seen it since then. Mm-hmm. My experience was a little different because as I was getting into anime, I was probably more like 12 or 13. And I actually watched while I was, like, licking the floor.
What the fuck is she
eating?
eating?
What are you eating?
Cat! Eating some kind of crumbs.
Yeah.
Little spats. Let me actually look up when those shows came out real quick.
But my first experience was actually watching Blood Plus on Toonami. And I was really into Blood Plus when I first found that, and I watched the whole show. And then I heard about Blood the Last Vampire, and so I watched that after having completed the original show. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this isn't anything like Blood Plus. This sucks.
Yeah, so that came out in 2005. Interesting. I thought it was actually later, yeah. I guess I was thinking of Blood C, which was much later.
You were thinking of Blood C, which was much later.
Blood Plus, yeah.
Blood Plus, yeah. So yeah, this movie was nothing like Blood Plus, and so I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't know what the fuck is happening. Like, I didn't have the perspective that it's a prequel.
Yeah.
I thought it would be more similar to the series. Mm-hmm. And so I was very thrown off by, like, what the fuck is going on here? This isn't, like, Saya. Where's Haji? What's going on? Like, totally did not get it. But I did somehow remember a lot of... I've only seen it the one time when I was, like, probably 14 or 15. Yeah. But I remembered a lot of the plot detail, even though it's a simple plot. But, like, I remembered that the movie was, like, naturally, like, kind of bilingual.
Yeah.
I remembered a lot of really particular things about, like, cuts and scenes and the way characters looked and, like, the way they interacted. Like, I was really surprised by how much of that I have a really strong memory of, considering I didn't like it really that much when I saw it when I was, like, 14.
And that's the same thing with me watching. It's like, I know I've seen it multiple times when I was 8, you know? And I've seen some of the cuts a lot of times in AMVs when I was younger. Because this was one of the big AMV sampled things at the time. Because it was like, this, Akira, Ninja Scroll, those were in all the AMVs. Because it was always just compilations of people dying. And so, like, most of the fight scenes I've probably seen more time through AMVs. But, like, it's just, the movie has such a distinct visual style, and it just looks like nothing else.
Yeah.
Other than maybe other early
movie.
2000s production IG shit. Like, the Animatrix has a really similar style.
Yeah.
And, like, I think they did the stuff from Kill Bill that was animated was production IG.
Maybe.
It's like, those things have similar aesthetics to this, but, like, just the character animation where it feels almost rotoscoped through a lot of the scenes, and it just sticks in your brain like, holy shit, because it's got such weight to it and impact, and it just looks incredible.
Like the scene where those two girls are in the infirmary and Saya comes in as they're about to transform, and the way she, like, rounds the corner into the infirmary, and the camera's, like, behind her, following her around the corner, and you're like, whoa!
It, like, almost gives me chills thinking about the cuts, because they're ridiculous.
It's, like, it just has so much impact. Like, it feels so kinetic.
And, I mean, aesthetically, as a horror anime, as an adult now watching it, like, this might be one of the peak horror aesthetics in anime, like, ever put on screen.
I think that's true because as a kid when you're watching it, especially me coming right off of Blood Plus, like I was super familiar with like the concept of chiropterans. Like obviously I was old enough to know they're not real.
Yeah.
And like I had been looking at them for so long watching the show that they didn't really like scare me.
Oh my god.
But watching this now and like putting myself in the shoes of the nurse, I was like, if something like this fucking happened to me,
oh Jesus.
Oh my god. Fuck.
So few things on that note, because I was 8 years old when I watched this, and we were terrified. This scared the fucking shit out of me. And we were terrified of Pteropterans everywhere. Like, that was our thing when we were outside. It was fear of Pteropterans in the trees and shit. And we would run down the street and see how far we could get. And then we go, like, my cousin would go, Pteropterans! And we go, ah! And we'd run home. Like, we were fucking terrified of them. And, like, this is my first exposure probably to katanas and vampire monsters and shit. Like, this was before Rurouni Kenshin was on TV or anything.
Yeah.
Like, super cool shit. We quoted the sword line constantly, I know that. Like, when I saw it in the trailer before we watched the movie, and I was like, ah! My childhood, it's rushing back into my brain! But yeah, just really effective horror moments, especially just the freakiness of the demons and, like, the realistic movement that they're animated in, where it's so fluid that it's creepy.
It really does feel like that's a human body that's been, like, warped, you know? Like, the way their faces stretch out, it's like,
God.
it does still vaguely resemble human skull anatomy, but it's so fucked up that you're like, ooh.
And they do such a good job with, like, the musculature of them and, like, the vascular arms and face, where it kind of looks like a horse, you know?
Yeah.
Where it's just like this imposing
it's like almost like a
creature.
bat, but a horse, but a human.
And then it goes into no detail of what the fuck they are.
Right.
So it's also like you see them morphing into people, and it's like you don't know anything about these things.
All you know is that they drink human blood.
Yeah.
So you're like,
Because it just goes right from the beginning. You're just in the plot, which is really cool. And I enjoy not having much context because I haven't watched any of the other stuff after this.
Yeah,
but,
it doesn't get bogged down in that. Like,
yeah.
It's
taking an action movie and cutting out, like, in any horror movie, really, it's cutting out the bullshit setup that's the first half of every horror movie, and it's just getting into the second half of the movie immediately, which I totally love.
Yeah.
And then some of the scenes are so fucking creepy. Like, the Halloween party scene is the best. Because there's a Halloween party going on at the high school on the military base, which is another interesting, like, Western, you know, this is a Western culture in this Japanese place where you have they're going between speaking English and Japanese constantly, which is really interesting. But, the teacher, the school nurse or whatever she was, is going to the Halloween party, and then you see the fucking Pteropteran, and it's cloaked in the cape, and you know what it is.
She's taking a banner off of the hallway because she's like half transformed, and she can't let anyone see her, so she's like ensconced in this fucking banner.
Yeah.
And everyone around her is wearing costumes, so like obviously no one thinks anything of it.
And they just drag out that scene so long, and you just get this awesome buildup of you're like, ugh, then it turns around so freakishly, and you're like, ah, yes, there it is.
And it fucking like grabs the nurse. I'll be like, oh god, just thinking about the
just fucked, like, objective murder. Like, every kill in the movie is just grotesque.
The dude who becomes a door barricade.
Yeah, so Saya and the teacher get trapped inside of this warehouse while it's on fire and exploding and stuff. And the English FBI guy or whatever he's supposed to be comes up, and he tries to get in, and there's just a mangled corpse in the bars barricading the door so he can't open it.
The American guard who had been keeping an eye on this, like, I think they were storing, like, vehicles in there. And clearly one of the Chiropterans had just fucking mangled him and jammed him in between the handles of the door so it couldn't be opened, and his body's just, like, twisted up, and you're like, ugh.
Absolutely savage. I gotta say, like, now as an adult and a cinematographer, the representation of lighting in this movie is really, really incredible. I think probably far ahead of its time, because now I feel like movies are in this direction where this movie really does the teal and orange really, really well. And the way it lights the hallways in the school, where like you see the ceiling lights giving off the teal, but then there's like the sunset coming in through the windows and creating that contrast, and it just like executes perfectly on the aesthetics the entire way through. And just feels really gritty and fucking badass. Background's always on point. Character art completely insane. Really, really gorgeous. Definitely worth a watch if you're a fan of fucking animation and you wonder how it peaked in the year 2000. Like, the integration of CGI, flawless throughout the whole movie. Like, they're still failing to do CGI integration that well in modern anime movies.
Yeah.
Like,
the CGI in this movie is almost, like, it's flawless.
Yeah,
it looks so good.
particularly in the first scene with the subway. Like, the subway train, I'm pretty sure was CGI, like, much of the time.
Portions of it,
And
yeah.
I think there's scenes where the Pteropterans are CG.
Really?
When they're running around. Yeah. I think
I don't
because
know.
there's scenes where they're going through shadows, and they just look so fluid that I feel like they could be. And they covered them up with shadows so that you wouldn't be able to
it's
see the
not
flaws in it.
obvious.
Because I think they did a really good job of blending. But it's kind of hard to tell. I know that there is CGI.
Sure.
But
yeah,
I'm not sure where it
definitely.
is, because they do a really good job of integrating it. Definitely had no idea when I was a kid. I don't know why I wouldn't even remember or think to look, when I was 8 years
When
old,
you're 8, yeah, that's
watching
fair.
like my 5th anime ever. Oh man, but great one to terrify your kids with. Like,
Oh, yeah.
there's one tit, you wouldn't notice it if you're little.
No, I don't think so.
I think as I was thinking of this as, like, how fucked up was I getting as a kid watching this? But I really think, like, as a little kid, this is a pretty good horror movie to freak you out, Because it's not too disturbing, I guess,
I think
besides the gore.
I think depending on the kind of kid you are,
Yeah.
if you're the kind of kid that fixates on monsters, this might not be a good idea.
It's also, it's like that shit when you're a kid where it's like, it's scary and you want to turn away, but it's so fucking cool that how can you turn away, Because you got this girl with a sword killing these monsters and it's fucking badass. Yeah, but I'm glad we watched it.
Yeah,
it
it was
was
great.
really cool. I definitely recommend it. It was a little hard to track down on the internet. Not an easy find. Very tricky. Good luck. I was a bit terrified. I think it's out on Blu-ray somewhere. It's probably very hard to get it. I think I saw a VHS tape that was like marked up to oblivion.
Whoa.
Somewhere on Amazon.
Shit.
Love to watch this on VHS on a CRT. Be super cool. Even though I'm sure that is part of why there's gaps in my remembering of the movie, because it's so dark that on
You
those
probably
old
couldn't
TVs.
determine what was going on.
Oh my god, it probably looks like just total ass
Yeah.
through a fucking VCR. But yeah, definitely a classic. Would recommend. I mean, it's only 45 minutes long, so you have nothing to lose by watching it. Like, it blew by really fast. I was surprised because I felt like it was going to be more boring than it was, and it just really
It
picks
really
up quick.
doesn't. It never stops.
Yeah, it wastes no
just
time.
Starts and it fucking goes.
Doesn't dwell on any plot points.
I mean, look at it this way: you could watch 2 episodes of Tower of God, or you could watch this, and this is a way better investment of your time.
Yeah, definitely. Just goes and fucking ignites. It's fucking badass. Legendary animation cuts. At least go look up an AMV, because, like, God, how did we peak so early in anime?
Anime was a mistake.
Ugh, anime was a
Miyazaki
mistake.
said so.
But I guess that's all we have to say about Bloodlust Vampire.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
You got
it
any more?
really just made me kind of curious to rewatch Blood Plus or Blood C and
Yeah.
see if I mean, Blood C is a different beast, but I wonder if I would still like Blood
Yeah.
Plus.
See, I never wanted to get into the other ones because it didn't look as good as Blood the Last Vampire.
It's
you
just
know?
not the same, you know?
It's not aesthetically the same.
Oh,
And,
not at
like,
all.
The aesthetics are so much of what make Blood the Last Vampire incredible. It's like I couldn't give a fuck about the story. It just looks fucking sick as shit. And, like, it makes me really want to deep dive into some more horror anime, because it's just, like, there's this in Perfect Blue, and then it's like, how many other, like, really aesthetically perfect horror anime do you have? There's Akunohana, they're few and far between.
Right. But I mean, that's anything.
Yeah.
Horror is a tricky genre.
I guess it makes me wonder, are there more horror classics that people don't really remember or aren't getting the hype they deserve from like anime horror fans, you know? Because when I saw this, I was like, this should be in everyone's like best anime horror movie list in terms of like what it accomplishes as a horror film. Like, there are some spooky fucking scenes in this movie, and you just don't see that often in anime, especially not anymore. Especially with TV anime, where they just can't even come close to that level of quality.
I mean, the Chiropter and monster design is so strong, and it's really hard to come across creature design like that in any medium, let alone in anime.
And just the combination of good directing, atmosphere, sound design, music, and like having the patience to time out scenes like that Halloween party scene where it had enough breathing room to be creepy, which you just don't get a lot of, especially in anime. It felt very much like a Western horror movie condensed into an anime, you know?
But with all of the like negative parts removed.
Yeah, exactly.
The bullshit that you don't really
like
care
aesthetically
about.
Like the Halloween party and the imagery in that scene is such a Western slasher horror like trope feeling scene, you know, and the high school setting and stuff, like that's where it almost feels thematically like they set it in this military base to show you that blending of Japanese culture through anime and American culture through like slasher horror films. Because that's what it feels like a combination of. I don't know how it is in the novels. It could have been that way in novels, so it could totally... I could be talking out of my ass, but...
I swear I read that novel when I was younger.
Probably. I think it has
I had a copy of it, but I don't think I do anymore.
Conrad probably has a copy of it.
Very strange. I'm sure.
You know I haven't read anything, because I'm never going to read.
Can't read.
But,
so.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm looking at my bookshelf. That's why I'm
staring. Oh, I'm like, why are you staring off
That's why I'm staring over to the side.
I don't think you have it,
I probably donated it a long time
ago.
ago.
You've got Boogie Pop over there.
I do.
Ooh, we should talk about Boogie Pop Phantom. Another horror classic.
I don't really think Boogie Pop Phantom's scary, though.
Alright, that's it for this.
Hot take.
Hot take.
Bye.